go ahead and get started again. Yes.
Well, sorry I missed quite a bit. I'm getting caught up with the police chief on their presentation. I've been talking with Daniel on his. The idea is we'll update the presentation that.
Justin, can you speak up, please?
Louder and into the microphone, sorry, it's just, yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, good.
I got in trouble too.
Okay. So basically, I was saying I will update the presentation with some of the information that you all received today, so I'll get caught up on that. But last week, we did get through the presentation. I don't know if you all wanted me to go back through any parts of it. I'd be happy to do that. Also discuss any parts. But I thought we would also to see what questions that you have that we can discuss, or also important, what type of information can I provide? What I know we're working on, for example, Jeremy, you asked for kind of consolidating the financial information into a one-pager, which I think we can do. So that may be one of the next things that we provide. But what else would be helpful?
You know, one thing that I've heard repeatedly from residents on both current Rogers residents who would be coming into Cave Springs and vice versa,
Yeah.
concerns the use of the emergency language. You know, could you speak to why there was a state of emergency declared? Like, you know, why that was a necessary part of it? And I think these may be distinct, but there's a feeling. And I'm saying I think they may be distinct just because when I look at the state law for simultaneous annexation and detachment, there's a timeline that's laid out by that, and we're following that timeline. From the perspective of some of the residents, the nature of that timeline and the emergency declaration makes people feel like this is being rushed or
Right.
crammed through.
And it's an emergency clause on ordinances. What an emergency clause concerns is when an ordinance goes into effect. And the Constitution says that it goes into effect 90 days after passage or upon the ending of a referendum period. Most cities, including our city, have set a referendum period by ordinance to be 30 days. And so if a ordinance is passed without an emergency clause, then the ordinance goes into effect in 30 days. If it's passed with an emergency clause, it goes into effect when it's passed. You are right that the simultaneous detachment and annexation statute has a process. And you know, for us, it's been in excess of 60 days. When the ordinances were prepared, I spoke to the Rogers City attorney about the emergency clause. Didn't feel like it was necessary, however, did it out of abundance of caution because there's a number of things that are triggered by the passage of the ordinance, including the timeline. And one of the concerns, like for example, we have a public hearing requirement that's coming up. Another thing is that we had to coordinate with Arkansas GIS on the legal descriptions and getting the clearance from Arkansas GIS with Arkansas Secretary of State's office. And so the concern was not wanting to get tripped up on a timeline with an argument that the ordinance was not in effect. So that was the purpose for it. In effect, it doesn't really have an effect because it's controlled by a timeline that's in the statute that's far longer than what the emergency, you know, or the referendum period for the city would be.
Okay, but and so just to drive that home, there doesn't have to be a tornado or a flood or a group of bandits or something for you to declare an emergency. It really just has to do with the timeline for when the ordinance takes effect.
That is correct. It doesn't have to do with, like we hear states of emergency being declared when there's a tornado or something like that. It's a separate issue. We sometimes do it when we have a contract that has to be signed, say for a purchase, and that purchase is not going to be available. Lately, we've had the problem with COVID with buying cars, and that's when there was one that was available and it was there, we had to do it right then. You know, we would use an emergency clause. We've used them in a lot of other different instances too, but it doesn't mean civil strife or you know, act of God or something like that.
Now, we're following the timeline that's outlined in the simultaneous
Correct.
annexation and detachment. Something you had mentioned is that this method of straightening out city lines, or however you want to, refer to it, this happens and has happened in this area relatively often.
Yes,
Is that correct?
yes.
Just in the past, I would say in the past 10 years for Cave Springs, how many times roughly have we brought land in through this way, or given up land to like Springdale or?
Six or seven, plus or minus one, maybe somewhere in that range. A number was Springdale, a really large one that was 10 to 12 years ago, that brought in a lot of the territory around Brown Road. That was a simultaneous detachment annexation with Lowell and Springdale. Several around Wagon Wheel Road, several with Bentonville, up at the northern part of the city. So I'd say 6 to be safe, but it might be 7, around that. 7 times.
7 and how long of a time frame, Justin?
Oh, 10 to 12 years.
Got it,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd have to go back and look. The big one was the one with Lowell and Springdale, and that was either 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, okay. I think that happened just before I started in council, so maybe,
2012 is stuck in my mind, so that may
I
be-
started in 13,
Okay.
actually I said 12, but that was when, it was 13.
So it may have been in 2012, yeah.
Just
when that
before
one-
it started.
But, so since then, I think there's been 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, I know there's been, nothing like this though.
Yeah, I mean, this was a little bit different because you have 2 happening at the same time. The Springdale one was very unique because that was a piece of territory that was landlocked between Springdale, Lowell, and Cave Springs. And the agreement between the cities was Springdale took the whole thing in and then detached portions to the 2 different cities. But we used the same process, but it was a little different than this process.
I had spoken to you earlier, but can you speak to the public hearings? You are trying to get those not on the same night?
Yes.
Okay, and then, exactly what it entailed when it comes to a public hearing. So our public hearing would be specifically for, and Rogers would be specifically for.
That's correct. So we have 2 different ordinances, one that's adopted by Rogers, asking to detach the areas 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that we kind of call the east properties from Cave Springs, and bring those into Rogers. And then we have an ordinance that has been passed to detach what we've called the west properties, west of 112, to detach those from Rogers and bring those into Cave Springs. The way the process works is as initiated by the ordinance that's requesting the detachment, which both cities have passed. Then that ordinance goes to the other city for a public hearing. It's a little strange. It goes to the other city, and that city holds a public hearing. So our ordinance to detach the west area properties is going to be, it has already been sent to Rogers, but there will be a public hearing in Rogers that they will hear, and at the next meeting after the next regular meeting after the public hearing, they will consider the ordinance. So likewise for us, their request to detach the east properties has been sent to us. We will hold a public hearing on that ordinance to release the property. And the request that you mentioned is to not have those occur on the same night. So we're gonna look at, and I think that's reasonable and I think we could do that by either having a special meeting or having that a work session or something like that. We can hold the public hearing. And the public hearing doesn't have to be held at a regular meeting. It can be held at a special meeting. It can be held at a workshop or something like that. I think that can be done to accommodate people if they want to attend both meetings.
And then I have one more question for you. If we, besides the fact that we won't be connected, what do we lose if we say no? Besides the fact that we won't be connected? The possibility that, add to it? Go
Yeah,
for it.
I mean, we've talked a lot about connectivity and getting back to Cave Springs where we have a corridor that's connected, from the land that we've lost to Rogers in the past. Are we opening up the land that we currently have to annexation by another city by keeping those on the island, by not annexing?
The problem that the city has had is that since the 1999 de-annexation that split the city in 2, the city's had a real difficult time with providing services to certain areas of parts of the city. Part of it has been kind of the span that the services would have to be run. But also contributing to that is having to run through territory that the city cannot provide, cannot get people to hook up because it's in a different city. Over the past 20 plus years, the city has lost a number of properties to de-annexations. That's where a property owner removes their property from one city to another in order to get services. We've had those over the years. Some of those have been in the northern island. Other ones have been kind of on the eastern part where city services cannot get to. So that has been a persistent issue with the particular properties that are the east properties. That has been always a challenge with services. So one of the benefits of reconnection that we talked about last time and that we identified was that it allows you to sort of spring your services up farther north to be able to serve those areas, especially if you're reconnecting up north. And so that, if that addresses the question, I mean, that was certainly one of the considerations for the city in addition to reconnection.
Okay, so the properties that we're losing, if we can't provide service, the properties that we are detaching from us, technically, I don't know your age range, I'm not, they could request to be annexed in on their own, right? So we don't have to do the but if they, over by Faithful Friends or whatever, there's a big Benville, there's a big water line over there too, correct? On the, off Stroudsman, by that cemetery?
Yeah, on Mount Hebron.
Yeah, Mount Hebron.
On Mount Hebron and
That's where the
Stroudsman,
focus line is, yeah.
there's a big water line pipe there. But if we can't provide sewer there, for the detachment part, they could individually request to be annexed into Rogers on their own.
That's correct.
Okay, and then,
Unless they create an island.
That's
Mhm.
correct, yeah. They can't create an island,
but Rogers is attached
Yeah.
on the other side.
If they,
And-
if they adjoin Rogers, then they can they can de-annex from, on their own petition, they can de-annex from Cave Springs and go into Rogers for
Could any
services.
one of them on Stratson create an island within Cave Springs if they removed that one property? Because everything beyond them would be separated from us, so they couldn't do it one at a time.
Yeah, the.
I'm not talking about that. I was just talking about the property on,
Yeah,
What I mentioned.
one of the eastern properties. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Now with the detachment, I have talked, to those, I mean, is there anything like, those are our residents right now.
Yes.
I feel like we've talked about the annexation in a ton, and we have not, addressed the de-annexation out.
Like what we're losing.
What we're losing, but not also, those are our residents, right?
Yeah,
And, you know, Stratsman's not feasible for the flow of traffic that would probably entail, and those property owners there, I'm assuming that road would be brought up to date. I feel like as a council, I guess I can't, you know, it would be up to Rogers, and so I just worry for them, the de-annexation part, because I really believe as a council, we have focused on the annexation in, but what are we losing? And I do like our small town feel personally, and I've toured our property over there, and I would want to live over there and be a Cave Springs resident and not a Rogers. So does Rogers, if, can't probably speak for Rogers, what, do they plan on making Stratsman a road, like a 2-lane road? That is substantial, because part of Stratsman's so narrow, and if you look at the property, all I see is from Cave, that's in Rogers, all I see is utilities. So I see that our current Cave Springs resident and granted, I do not know as much as you two, they're gonna lose a lot of property to make that road expansion, which I'm assuming Rogers would do. Can you speak on that at all?
Well, and maybe before you do, Justin, real quick, because I actually talked to John Pesic about this and Rogers, because I was also so I went down Strathman. I think, you know, I forwarded you guys an email maybe, or mentioned that. And so, you know, the Stanton property, which is the you know, I think it's 27 acres, that is the, you know, 3 houses closest to Mount Hebron going down Strathman. They brought up some concerns about setbacks, about their ability to, you know, to continue to use their land for what they've been using it. They actually have an airstrip out there that's still registered with the FAA, and these are all things that are important to them, you know, and everything else aside, I wanted to make sure that if this annexation was to go through, because again, I'm one vote, that they would have some legal protections there. And I talked to John Pesic, who's the Rogers attorney, and he said that he would sit down and make them a memorandum of understanding, like outlining certain promises from the city of Rogers to them to respect their property rights. And he compared it to, you know, we had somebody on North Rainbow Road or South Rainbow Road, maybe it was, that came into Rogers from a county annexation, and their big holdup was they wanted to still be able to shoot on their property, because in Benton County you can shoot, in Rogers city limits you can't. And so they actually created a memorandum of understanding for them, outlining that they could use their property for those purposes. So it is more of a Rogers question. I've been trying to seek some of those answers out in real time too for the residents, because you know, those residents that we're losing are in my ward, and so I am, you know, I've been trying to track some of those answers down for them.
Will you ask about that? Because the,
Let me,
like if they do, they plan on making, I just feel like we owe our cave residents a little more explanation of
so,
what that would entail on their
Yeah.
property.
so in general, what we talked about when we discussed it was that on all sides, that we endeavor to zone the properties to compatible uses, and there would be uses that would be considered as prior existing uses. Those that come into Rogers or those that come into Cave Springs, and the idea was to keep that, to recognize those as prior existing uses, and going forward. The kind of the questions about Strathman that have come up more recently, I've not had the opportunity yet to talk to Rogers about, and I'd like to maybe get a little more information. I'm just hearing that from JJ tonight, and to be able to come back to y'all and give you an update on that, because I want to be correct. I don't want to say something, I'll be out on a limb. So let me talk a little bit about that with them, because some of the Strathman's issues just were brought to my attention kind of late last week, and I haven't yet had that opportunity to talk to them. But I've noted that, and I'll do that and then update you all about it.
Well, and I'd like to maybe put you in contact with the property owners at, you know, at the end of the night as well, that are over there, if that would be okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, absolutely.
I would just like to kind of connect you guys. And this brings up a different question, Justin. This is not really sort of a question maybe that you can kind of like weigh in on, but it is more of a question. I mean, it's more of something I just kind of want to bring up in this forum. Is there is a statute that outlines this process. Cities use the statute, you know, and in the statute, there are time limits and minimum thresholds that have, you know, you in order to do X, you have to post it in the paper, you know, then you have to wait this many days. There's a minimum threshold that's laid out in the law. And from my view, we have thus far followed the law in this process. But something that has repeatedly come up to me when I am talking to residents from both cities is that, you know, at least for Cave Springs, I cannot control what Rogers does. And guys, I hope you know, we can't control Rogers. We have no power over there. But in the future for Cave Springs, as we've been talking recently about, you know, outlining procedures, that minimum, while it may, you know, satisfy due process and stuff, I think that there's a discussion about what we potentially need to do in the future to make sure that our residents are aware, or that different residents are aware that these things are affecting them. You know, when I've talked to residents from Scissortail, there are a lot of concerns that are being brought up many of them I think have a lot of merit, but I also think that a lot of it is animated by the fact that this blindsided folks. And in our own city, you know, we are talking about 6 or 7 households. You know, I mean, it seems to me that it would have been trivially easy for us to send out our code enforcement folks, you know what I mean, to let folks know, hey, you know, we're gonna be starting this annexation process next week. And again, this isn't me, I'm not wagging my finger at anybody, Justin, that's clearly not your job, and we pay you to come in and do contract work. Randy, you know, I'm not sure that's your job, but it's one of those things that I do think it's something for us to all learn from this situation is, you know, let's just say that this was universally good for both cities, even the residents who are being swapped and they're just being transigent and don't realize it. Either way, everybody feels left out of the process and feels, you know, that they're kind of having to play catch up. And it's just something that I'm noticing in real time that I think in order to be the kind of public servants we all want to be, it's just something to really pay attention to in the future, and that if we're ever planning to use this method again in the future, that we consider that. And guys, I mean, you'll see, you know, I mean, we have no cool Illuminati plans or anything. I mean, none of us are at least I'm not getting any kickbacks. If the rest of you guys are, that's awesome. But you know, I'm not getting anything personally from doing this. We have nothing to gain personally from it. And like I was talking to you guys earlier, we have a lot to lose in terms of, you know, we may have a scissor-tail mob at some point, you know, that's coming for us. But, you know, we're trying to make decisions in real time that are best for the city. And I just think that in order to do that in the future, we may need to explore some methods of having more open communication and trying to let people know on the front end. And just so you guys know, those of you that I haven't talked to, and I responded to every email that I got from Scissor-Tail residents. And so, you know, I've done everything I can to be open and accommodating. I've given my cell phone number out to everybody who I've talked to. And I'm trying to be, you know, open and available to you guys, but I feel like it's something for us to really consider as we move forward. You know, we didn't know about this much earlier than you guys did. And when I say we, I mean the council. You know, there was no backdoor meeting. There was no, you know, Randy did not let any of us know until that work session. You know, I just think that's something that's important to know. I know that may not, it may answer some of your fears and heighten some of the other ones, right? But I'm giving you the information that I have. I want you guys to know that that's how the process played out from my perspective. And, you know, it's just something I think to learn from in the future. And I don't know how much that does for you guys, but, you know, especially to Mrs. Stanton, I apologize. I think that we should have reached out to you much earlier and that you should have been made aware of it.
Within common courtesy.
Yeah.
Transparency over the whole thing, I guess.
If I could make just one comment, and open to that.
Well,
I know it's not a public hearing, but
You know, somebody be decisive. I'll stay. Go
Okay.
ahead, Shannon.
I
Yeah.
would, so I'm Shannon Stanton, I own 26 acres on Stratzman, there's about five homeowners on that street. And I don't wanna focus on me, I want to ask the council to spend the last bit of your time discussing what all you're losing as a whole. There's, or what you're asking to be voted on here in a month, because according to the attorney, you will be voting on whether to approve the detachment of us. And you spent all your time talking about what's coming. So there's Faithful Friends, there's the new storage development, there's the HHC Homes development, there's an 80-acre that is across Mount Hebron that is a prime location. And I get it that Rogers is right on the other boundary and they will be seeking utilities, but there is a huge 48-inch pipe that I know goes, because it goes behind our property straight across to the other side. So there is potential there. The location is a prime location. And I just ask that you spend more time talking about the cost, the revenue. I know the storage unit is not open, but there are people who can predict the revenue that will come in and the future mixed use maybe that's in the 80-acre tract that will probably get developed across from us. I just ask you spend your last time talking about all of us that you will vote here to detach. So. I love this small town. I love our side of Strathman. We are rural, we are estates, we're on wells and septic. We don't require your utilities, but we love being part of it. So that'll leave it there.
Justin, I got a couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Number one, did you check that?
Yes, so, you talking about the statute?
Yeah.
So you asked me a question about a statute, it is 40,
It's 2020, Title
of-
40.
yeah, 1440, 2022,
20.
2201, 2202, I think specifically you were talking about, let me pull it up again. 2202, so the statute that we're under is 1440, shoot, every time I touch this, it goes different, hold on one second. The statute that we're under for the simultaneous detachment annexation is 1440, 2101. And that area, that kind of subchapter or part of the code has a lot of different annexation mechanisms. Some are petition annexation, some are elections, others are like this, actions that the cities can take. But you were asking me about 1440, 2202, and what that states is that, if you read the first part, it says, all annexations under 1440-303 in accordance with 1440-606, that's referring to an election, an annexation election statute. So if a city poses an election in order to annex territory that's in the county, that once that election is declared annexed after the vote, that all the inhabitants have the rights and privileges of being a citizen of the city, and that they shall be extended scheduled services within 3 years of the date of annexation is final, and it has a mayor filing a report. And if those services can't be extended within 3 years from that point, then there needs to be a plan for how that's going to be completed. I was looking at that section. That applies to an election, an annexation election, but I think the question was good in asking about how these requests for services would work in a situation like we have here, where there's a simultaneous detachment annexation. And the way that would work under the proposal that we have is that streets, fire, police, ambulance, those type of services planning would happen immediately, or at least upon the ordinances being adopted. And through the utility agreement between the three entities, at least as it is right now, that the city, Cave Springs, would have 5 years to connect up that area to water and 7 for sewer. So I don't really think that particular section applies to our annexation. If it did, the answer would be that some of the services would be immediate, other one would be on a contracted timeline that's agreeable, between the two cities. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent it did. So the services that they're gonna get will be 5 years from Rogers for water and 7 years for sewer. I mean, that's how the contract is. So in some ways, if it's an election, I mean, people go on a ballot and decide if it is within 3 years, but if we're doing it, we're giving them 5 years. But after 5 years, we're not sure we're gonna provide them with services or not. I'm not saying we're not, I'm just saying that we're not sure, depending on our financial aspect of it, are we gonna be able to do it or not? And, we're discussing this, so I'm really nervous to some extent to say, okay, 5 years, we're gonna for sure provide that services to them. I wanna make sure that we know what our cost is, and we have a program, Mr. Mayor, that we're gonna show how are we gonna pay for those. Is it gonna be bond money? Is it gonna be impact fee is not gonna be enough, we know that, to take care of those issues. And I wanna make sure we're clear, we don't wanna have a 5 years like a loan that you got a 5 years balloon on it, and then you got problem when the 5 years gets there. I really am.
Well,
I'm-
you're hitting.
Can I finish? I'm sorry, I don't mean to, I wasn't.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. So that's one of my question. My other question is that, what if one city passes and the other city doesn't pass?
Yeah, that's we've talked about that, and I think we would want to have, if there is a city that is not going to go forward, like if, in other words, if we were not going to go forward with the detachment, I would want to be able to have that discussion with you all beforehand at a work session or something like that to let them know, because the plan is right now that it would be done on the same night. So in that respect, it's a step.
So it's not, we don't have anything in place right now that if it didn't happen, that we're not.
As it is right now, we do not. And so, essentially both cities would need to be on the same page. If we're not on the same page, then we would need to address that.
So that's why I want to make, the reason I ask this question is I want to make sure, because there is a possibility one city might pass it and the other city doesn't pass it, and we should have some mechanism in there, some contingency that we can make sure our city is protected and their city protected for that reason. My last thing I want to say to everybody on the council is that I know, looking at financial aspect of it, that's one thing. The other side of it is, like Erica said too, I really want to make sure we're doing the right thing for the citizens that we have here too. That they're gonna go to another city. I was thinking this morning, in fact, I was reading everybody's email like JJ did and responded to everybody. But do I want to personally live in Cave Spring and somebody that sits on the city council, this body of city council, tell me that I need to go to Rogers now? I don't want to. I want it to be on a ballot and be decisions be made on that. That's my point of view. That's how I feel if it was me. And I hate to see I put other people in it, treat them differently that I want to be treated. So I'm not saying I want to vote this way or that way. These are some things I'm challenged with. I hope you could help answer some of those questions. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, you're good. I'm sorry, MC. Just something occurred to me, and I thought you were trailing off, but I love that second question. By the way, I actually wanted to explore the first one, but that's a great question. I mean, so Justin, wouldn't there be some sort of contingency? Because if one council passed it and the other didn't, what would happen?
There's not in the way the statute is drafted right now. That there is no contingency that would be allowed. We talked a little bit about this on one of the first meetings, either the work session or the first regular meeting. I can't remember.
I wasn't at the work
I can't
session.
remember
We
which
might
one.
have addressed this already, but I think it's an open question.
Yeah, it is, and it's something where we have this period of time where we are getting information and talking about it. But certainly it is a situation where both cities are taking the first step at the same time. And so if this thing were not on track for approval, I think we'd want to know that ahead of time.
But how could we know? I mean, sometimes I've seen votes change just in the meeting.
I mean, I think that would have to be taken into account and talked about, and so we would have to, if there's trepidation, we would have to have discussion about that, and I'd have to report that over to Rogers and sort of see, you could also, you could stagger the votes on different nights, but then you still have that possibility where one approves and one doesn't, so. I mean, this is unique, and as I mentioned before, to be blunt about it, I think this is your opportunity to reconnect the city. I don't see another pathway where you can do it. It's been tried for 20 years. And so it does pose a unique situation for us. But, you know, there's not another mechanism where I could see reconnection occur.
So I want to get specific, and let's talk a hypothetical, because I kind of asked a question and wasn't sure what the answer was. Let's say specifically that we passed the swap agreement and Rogers voted it down. Would that mean that we lose our residents and we don't get anything back? Is that what would happen, or what exactly would happen as the next step, as the outcome?
If one passed and the other one did not pass, then that would be the effect.
Yeah,
So, okay.
it's like a prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, so if Rogers passes it, we don't pass it, we get Scissortail and we keep our
Yeah,
East property, and then on the reverse, is that correct? Okay, yeah, so if Rogers passes the annexation, the question that I'm asking is,
If they-
if they pass it and we vote it down,
yeah.
would Scissortail still become, I mean, because we wouldn't have been voting on the annexation, we would have voted up the
That's correct.
annexation, right?
That's correct.
So nothing would happen.
No.
basically.
What you said was correct. If Rogers, what Rogers would be agreeing to is detachment of the west properties.
Okay.
If they approve that, then the area is detached.
So, and then what would happen to Scissortail if they get detached and we don't annex? And guys, I get it, I'm absorbing your emotions in real time. Justin has been a city attorney for, 2/3 of my life. So, I mean, he knows what he's talking about for the most part. And so, but I'm trying to get real answers here because,
Yeah.
Rogers voted 6-1 or 7-1 on the first part. So it's, not to put it too fine a point on it, but they don't seem to want Scissortail to remain part of the community. So I'm trying to figure out what happens in real time if they pass this and we don't. I want to have like real answers on it.
So what,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's,
Can
yeah,
I say one thing to add on to that, JJ? When I voted to table, you said that we still get to vote on it, so I withdrew my motion. I would have never withdrawn my motion to table.
We still get to vote in it.
But what you just said is, I would have kept my table on that night.
So,
I guess I did not
You didn't
understand.
vote on it, we didn't vote.
No, I
No.
voted to table, you weren't here for it. Wait,
Oh,
when I voted to table last time,
I
I took on the fact that I withdrew that because I thought there were still discussions and we still could side one way or the other. That's the only reason I withdrew. You seconded it. So now what is coming to fruition is
Here-
something that, what JJ said is what exactly I was trying to avoid.
Here-
And
here-
misunderstanding.
Eric, let me weigh in a little bit because, in a way, we've done this before. This was sort of what like the Lowell, Springdale, and Cave Springs agreement was about. We all let Springdale annex the whole thing, and then they came later and, at a following meeting, and then portioned off parts that came to Cave Springs and that went to Lowell, that stayed with, Springdale. This is basically, working through an arrangement with Rogers, is what it is. And so if, in what we talked about, and I think they're working in good faith on it, I think we're working in good faith on it. If we were likely not to accept it, we would be talking about that before the meeting, and we would go to, one of us would go talk to Rogers and say, this is not likely to pass, or there's problems here, or whatever, so we could work through that. I would not want to be in a situation where we didn't know going into a meeting what the feeling of the council was on either side. And so, I think we, it would be appropriate for a council on a question of this nature to be, somewhat unified on the question going into it.
Justin, I'm all for good faith, okay? However, I did a lot of research on this, honestly, and that's why I asked that question. I wanna know what happened, and the answer was exactly what you said. If one passes, the other one passes, then it goes to the other one. That's why I asked that question, and Erica is correct. when she was asking, we never know that, you know, that could happen. At least I didn't know until now that I did a little bit of research. I want to know, is there anything else that needs to be on the table that we're not aware of it? Because that's an important thing, that's
No,
a
it
big
was.
subject.
It's this, and I understand that, and the process is a little confusing, right? Because you have it initiated in one city and going over to the other city, and we have two of those happening at the same time, so they're crossing over each other. And, you know, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. I certainly believe I talked about that in the first couple of meetings that we had those, you know, that was the situation, and that if, you know, both cities weren't on board with this proposal, that we would let the other city know, because we're both going forward on it, either together or not. And, you know, throughout this entire process, I've tried to lay everything out that I know, and when I've been told to go get something, I'm trying to get that information and provide it, because, you know, that's what we need to do through this process. I want to emphasize a couple things. This was not an idea that City of Cave Springs concocted. This was something that was brought to us. And so, you know, if it is the method by which we have to do this is this particular statute. And, you know, it poses the question that if, you know, the city desires to reconnect, you know, I feel like I have to tell you, this is the only way that I know to be able to do it. And I know it raises lots of other questions that we're having to resolve and talk about and consider, but I don't know of any other, I mean, there's more work to do on this. The utility agreement, we need to continue to work on and negotiate. I mean, there are other parts to this that needs to come together. You guys want more information on finances for water and sewer and what that would take, and I think that is all information that you have to have, but I'm really trying to provide all the information I know and to try to make the process as sensible or as understandable as possible. And I totally understand that it can be confusing.
Honestly, I'm not saying that you're not trying to be transparent. I just want to make sure, is there anything else that we didn't think about it? You know, that's, obviously I didn't understand that. I don't know about everybody else. That's why I did some research on my own to make sure I took that action. And I feel very uncomfortable again with the fact that I mean, if they don't pass it and we pass it, we could lose part of our town too. That's something to consider.
Justin, you have done a very, very good job. I guess when I asked that, I clearly must have misunderstood you. I thought if we didn't pass it, because I wanted to talk, I felt like it was rushed, so I asked a table. I thought if we didn't, like a city didn't pass it, like, no, the way, I didn't understand what JJ had said just now. I didn't understand that. I don't know if other council members did or not, but I didn't understand that night clearly.
Well, this very question is something we talked about at the meeting at Rogers, and what would happen if one city was not on board. And you know, the answer to that is that we would want to know that ahead of time, be upfront, communicate about it, and say, hey, we've got a lot of questions, because you know, I don't think we want to get to the point where we don't know coming up to the meeting. So I think the purpose here is try to get all the information, get all the questions, so we can provide it, and so it informed, you can put everything out there and make the decision. I realize this is not an easy one, but you know, I don't know what else to say. If you all have a suggestion or an idea on proceeding on that, you know, I'm happy to explore it with Rogers. But the way the statute is, I just don't know of a way to kind of build in a fail-safe that would, you know, allow us to not be upfront about, you know, the way that we're going to vote until the day of voting, and then if it doesn't all work out, we can all back out of it. There's just not, that just doesn't exist. And this is a very, you know, the annexation statutes are very particular, and so, you know, you have to follow those processes. But practically speaking, if Cave Springs doesn't want to go through with this deal, and that we don't have a consensus on the council for doing so, you know, all it will take was me communicating that to Rogers, and I think that would be the end of it.
Act 779 was the reason that those islands were created on
Yes.
Cave Spring.
Yes,
And now that Act 771, as we know, they can't create island anymore. So, but now what we got, that's an island. In some ways, there is no other way to go to understand what you're saying, but what price are we gonna pay for it? And if Rogers really likes us, why don't we let us just get those islands and clean it up so much?
yeah, I think, you know, the other, you know, obviously we're being blunt at this point, but I think there are unknowns with this. It requires a number of things. It's gonna require a utility agreement, it's gonna require new MOUs in place, it's gonna require, you know, a capital plan, it's a dedication to that end. You know, just like the NACA plan, where we said, we're going to NACA, we're gonna turn this other plant off, we're doing it, you know, it requires that kind of level of dedication. So, you know, those are all kind of considerable things. On the other hand, I do think that if you don't reconnect and you don't have that march of utilities up to that part of the city, I think you're gonna continue to lose property to Act 779s.
Maybe, I don't know, you're the attorney, so I trust what you're saying.
Well, it's just been the course of, I mean, we've had Act 779s over, request, even over the last couple of years, that they paused. But, you know, with all the development pressure that's going on, we're getting to properties that don't have services and they don't have another choice. And so, you know, I just don't know of another way to, you know, the last, you know, 4 or 5 mayors have all had different approaches to trying to reconnect, either through daisy chain annexations, getting agreements with other utility companies to serve. None of that has worked. And the way that the annexations have occurred to date now, especially after the election and annexations that went into Bentonville in 2019, the pathway to reconnect is just,
So
it's
we
out there.
can get, I mean, can we get easement to go through those rather than,
Yes.
let's say, okay, so that's one way of looking at it.
yeah, you can get an easement across, and we have Bentonville water easements coming through our
Yeah, that's gonna be
city
wrong.
and, yeah.
I'm just not trying to be difficult, I'm just trying to put all the question on the table, then we make a
Yeah,
decision based on that.
I'm glad you are, MC, and everybody. And, you know, Justin, when you brought up NACA, I mean, that was like the biggest no-brainer in the history of Cave Springs. So we were all on board, it made total sense. But this one, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts, and there's stuff we don't know, like we said. What I would like, and Erica and I were talking about this during the break, what I think we all need, besides answering some of these questions, but like a full spreadsheet accounting, like we're making a business decision. So, I mean, the chief brought out the, you know, what it's gonna cost in terms, we could name 3 officers and 2 cars, and we could do the math, and JJ was putting that together, and we were doing some math, like this is gonna be, you know, $500,000 or something, you know. But we need to look at, and then Daniel did a great job of talking through some of the costs of the new line, and then, you know, impact fees and that, which I know we were writing it down, but we need to take the whole picture, and then, you know, the property we're giving up, what are we giving up in terms of tax revenue? What are we gaining in terms of tax revenue? What kind of tax revenue do we get from Faithful Friends, and what could we get from the storage facility? We need to add all of that up, and we need to have a clear understanding that, first of all, we can actually afford this, because that's not clear in my mind. I mean, yeah, I'd love to reconnect with the north, that sounds great, I'm in the north. But if it's gonna put a huge burden on the city. I mean, we don't know. We don't, none of us has any idea how the math is gonna work out until we actually get the math. We need a full accounting, top to bottom, number one. And then number two, this issue still bothers me and I still don't understand it. They're like, if one backs out, you know, and there's no way you'll know how everybody's gonna vote until we actually vote, I guarantee you. I think there's a lot of, again, it's really complex, it's a lot of ambiguity, it's totally not straightforward. So, there's no way that I feel like this council's a slam dunk.
Yeah.
And no matter what, almost.
If I can jump on that, well, yeah.
Well,
just-
let me say
yeah,
one
go
thing on
ahead,
that. I've heard the concern on that. I don't want to make the sausage in front of you guys. So let me come back to you guys with something addressing that concern.
Well, the money or the other?
Well, the first one, why, you don't want me advising you on money.
So it's both. Both are a concern.
But we did note that the desire to kind of take these projections of cost and revenue and put them in sort of one pager.
Yeah.
So we're.
And I thought we were gonna get that tonight. I mean, this is
Well,
like
the-
really complex.
the-
It's not gonna get done in a week.
No, and the reason it's not done tonight is we haven't incorporated the police in the estimates that Daniel put
Daniel
together.
came up with.
That just came together, so we'll be putting that part together. But on the, on the voting concern, let me
Okay.
visit with Rogers and then come back to you all.
Yeah, that's-
There may be a few things that we could do to address that
Okay.
particular concern.
You know, when we voted for NACA, it was a slam dunk. I
Slam
mean, we
dunk.
had to do that. We've had a lot of other issues come up in the city, and we're dealing with them. To me, this is, I mean, we even tried annexing the west of here, and that was a vote, and it didn't go. This is a little different to me. I mean, we've got people that may come into the city who don't want to be in our city for whatever reason. I hear a lot of things, but I think most of those concerns were addressed tonight. And they're a large subdivision. But we have those citizens in our city on Stratzman who don't want to leave and have been in Cave Springs for years. And I struggle with that
Yeah.
myself, plus the financial end of it. You know, it's not gonna be an easy slam dunk decision. It's just not.
Yeah, and if I could speak to that really quickly, I mean, this has been a complicated philosophical discussion for me. You know, so we have, both cities, Rogers has 75,000 people, we have, 6,500 people, something like that. So when we're talking about, the number of people moving from city to city, we're talking about, 0.5% of Rogers' population leaving, but it makes a 10%, or 15% jump in our population. And I think that's part of it is, obviously I think everybody's trying to act in good faith here. Rogers brought this deal to us. And, within, that was only a couple of months ago and here we are now. But, of course, Rogers is gonna have at least some level of support for it because for whatever reason, they want rid of these fine folks, right? And so, they brought that to us. Of course, they're gonna have some agreement. For them, they're losing 0.5% of their population, right? And bringing in 20 or 30 potentially unhappy Cave Springs residents, right? This is gonna be a 15, 20% shift in our population of a bunch of folks who may hate us, and it's gonna require redistricting the city. I doubt Rogers is gonna have to redistrict or draw new ward lines because they're bringing in Stratzman Lane. There just are more logistical issues for us, and we weren't the moving party. So we kind of had this deal dumped in our lap, and I have a great deal of respect for you. I have a great deal of respect for John Desick. I don't think that anybody is trying to do anything underhanded, and frankly, like I told you guys, I respect Justin's opinion quite a bit. And at the end of the day, there are some issues that, if if it really comes down to it, there are these things that we have to weigh that are somewhat intangible, or that we can't just come to a perfect mathematical answer on, like, what will be the effect of leaving the cities disconnected, and what will be the benefits of connecting it. These are genuinely hard questions to answer, and I think that's how everybody's feeling is, we had this deal brought to us that just has a lot more of an impact on Cave Springs than it does on Rogers. And I don't think anybody's trying to hold down on you. I actually think that, frankly, all 6 of us are still trying to make a decision in real time with both the data that we have coming in, the responses that we have coming in from residents on both sides, and in real time, we're also trying to take, your advice on certain things that you have expertise on, and, or Chief and Keith, when they have their expertise. We're listening to those people in real time. We're looking at what little data that we do have coming in. We're trying to weigh that against the intangibles. And it is a lot. And so, I think that's just something that, like Mark said, it's not a slam dunk. I think everybody here is still trying to make their decision in real time. And I think that the positioning by Rogers of kind of a take it or leave it, no negotiation type deal is making it a lot harder for everyone to get on board with, and that's just on top of all the feelings of the residents, and everything else. It is complex. Rogers, they were trying to get rid of Scissortail to Bentonville, so to them, it's just snip, that is an easy decision. I can see that. I think we have to be a little bit more deliberate about it, and, I don't know how to do that when there isn't, obviously the way the statute is set up, any negotiation theoretically would have happened before the first vote, and, I don't know, it just puts us in a difficult position, Justin, and like I said, guys, when I asked Justin, I already know your answer to this question, do you think we need to tie the city back together? Do you think that that's a thing that we should do, and that we should, if we have to, take this route to do it? The answer seems to be yes from you, right?
The answer is that's not my decision, it's your decision.
No,
The,
but what do you
if you
think
want
is good for the city?
But the reason why I'm in, what I'm trying to do is, and maybe I'm colored a little bit about history, because we've had mayors in the past and councils in the past who really bemoaned this and tried to fix it. So, if you all see that as a concern that drops into your, one of your top issues that, the city needs to move forward to, this is the only way I see to do it. And so I've got to lay that out there and say, this is it. If, after evaluating everything, you say, well, I think the medicine's gonna be worse than the disease, then, I think that's a legislative decision that only you all can make. I think that's where ultimately it lies.
I've got something real briefly too. We've discussed a lot about Scissortail, the cost of Scissortail, what could happen there, we haven't talked much about the east side. And we brought up the deal with Faithful Friends Animal Clinic. And she's having extremely serious problems with plumbing, because what she does is on a septic system. And she met with me a year ago and asked, or basically gave me an ultimatum, that when Rogers got that development next to her and services to her, she had no choice but to go there. The property owner, one of the property owners that has the development coming around him, his family was moved out in the country years and years ago. He plans to be in the country. He said, if they come to me and offer me enough, I may very well go to the country with what they give me. And he could do that, and they could de-annex out, as long as they leave a little strip that we can't use tying it to the northern part. And so there are some legitimate concerns over there because of the growth in Rogers and the fact that they can provide services that we've seen when we were split, and we've seen with the property just south of St. Valerie Downs, and the property that they're threatening, the 20 acres they're threatening to take out south of Chatton Valley. We've seen it. We have no choice in that matter. So we could very well not tie it back together and lose the east side, even if everyone voted to keep things as is.
No, I understand what you're saying there. Well, but then that kind of comes down to you wanting to contribute or like say something?
There's already been those discussions with me
Who-
in
with-
those properties.
With,
Hey,
like
what's
Faithful
there?
Friends?
Well, not with Faithful Pens, other properties.
Okay.
There's been discussions about, hey, what do we have on this north side? And there's more people that would potentially de-annex from the north piece of land.
If the city doesn't
So-
get connected?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's not an if, that's a when question. It will happen. The storage unit provides us no money. Storage units do not provide tax revenue. I know that.
Okay.
As far as what Faithful Friends provides, plus the homes, I guarantee it's not enough to cover the maintenance that we use on the roads that are over there that we own half of. Just speculating.
No, that's good information. I mean,
Yeah.
that can be in the spreadsheet, because there's a lot of pieces.
Yes, there's already pieces of land over there and up top that, are having these discussions and are already concerned with that. So, I mean, I just kind of wanted to say that that is a legitimate concern, what the mayor is saying. We're holding on to something in the breadbasket, and we're gonna start off with a wheel of cheese, and by the end, it's gonna look like Swiss cheese. And we might have little strips of land just trying to connect things, or we'll just lose it all.
Planning Director David Keck, everybody, I see questions, I saw some faces that were concerned or
So,
questioning.
appreciate the input.
Well, Faithful Friends actually reached out to Justin, and Justin, you said that animal services, just like human services, aren't taxed.
Erica, I want to make sure that I haven't talked to Faithful.
Oh, I thought you said that, just like if I went to the doctor, if you go to the doctor.
Yeah, we were talking about sales tax.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry if I made it seem like I
No,
talked
I
to
mean,
them.
like-
No, I have not.
Oh, sorry.
And
Never
that
mind.
is accurate, but they sell a lot of collars.
Yes, and that's
things
different.
still.
I was talking about the actual,
The actual services are not.
the actual services are not.
I don't know, I'm pretty sure I pay sales tax when I go there.
I apologize, I do not know.
Receipts.
I misspoke maybe. I apologize if I
I,
misspoke. I saw sales tax as in selling stuff, of course, but
I think what Mark said at the end of the day, as far as financial aspect of it goes, we just have to have a P&L for that.
Well,
Spreadsheet that shows everything that's gonna come in, everything that's gonna go out, and what we're gonna need to invest for police department and all that. So we can have that's financial aspect of it. For me, myself, I don't wanna, influence anybody's decision, but for me, for what research I did myself, it is important for me to know what if Rogers doesn't pass it.
totally good.
Good faith is good, but I'd like to know what are my options, which Justin is gonna look into it. And then the other thing is for me is that I'm really struggling with the fact, how would I feel if somebody tells me that not putting it on a ballot even, just the city council is gonna decide that you're gonna be out of Cave Spring or you're gonna come into the Cave Springs. I'm really struggling with that.
I came on council because the council listened to me. I had a problem in a 6-foot trench in my backyard. And the council listened to me, and it was because of water coming through, actually over from Rogers and hit 264 and coming through, created a 6-foot trench in my backyard. And Justin worked very, very, very hard. And he is a very, very good attorney. But I came on council saying that I would listen to people. I'm here to represent the people and people's concerns. Sister Taylor, you're not mine, but your concerns are valid, and I hear you. And I wouldn't want to be told just basically what MC is saying. Apologize again for my Faithful Friends comment. I don't know, I'm not an attorney, I don't know that they're getting those numbers. But right now I'm very struggling so much that you don't want to be a part of CAVE, but also the land I toured, many council, I know of at least 3 council members that have driven Scissortail with a police officer. So we do our research, and we want our research done. And I feel like CAVE has really, really listened to you all And because your questions, if you don't ask them, they're gonna be our questions, and maybe some of them that I didn't, or no one up here did. But if I'm representing the people in Cave right now, the NACA sewer line, that wasn't people's lives.
Right.
So I am really struggling. I see you, I hear you. You're not mine, and, we have to do what's best for the city. But right now I am struggling with financial numbers that are throwing up there as well, plus, other things. So I just wanted to say that, MC, what you're saying, I feel grasped with too.
Totally agree. I want to make a comment on the financial part, because I brought that up. Well, we've all talked about it, but to me, it's not a matter of like looking to see like, oh, we'll have this big gain. Like we're not in it for the money. I think JJ, you said that earlier, and I want to hit that point. I'm not in it for the money either. I just want to make sure we don't bite off more than we can chew and put ourselves in a bad position. That's my main concern. Not, oh, are we gonna make millions, but, oh, we're gonna lose millions.
Yep.
You know, and then, I've actually ridden my bike through your neighborhood, Scissortail, it's beautiful. So,
There's no gate in the back.
It's
You walk through a
open.
field.
Yeah.
I
At
rode
least you took me.
I rode my bike there before they put the gate there, when they were still building it. I haven't been there in a couple of years, but I have, when they were constructing it, and several of y'all were living there already, but I was able to ride my bike right in. And I knew there was gonna be a gate, it was getting built, but it wasn't closed, so I rode right in a couple of times. I didn't run through an open house. I just left my bike out front and walked through an open house,
So what Mark is
not an
saying.
open house, but I mean a realtor doing an open house, right? So, yeah, I'm very familiar with that neighborhood, and it's not far from me.
Well, and I mean, obviously the financial questions, bringing this together is really important to me, and I kind of want to get this out there because, you know, anytime there is a city issue that really directly affects certain residents, those are the residents that we hear from. You know, obviously we have 6,500 other residents in Cave Springs. Some huge percentage of them still have no idea this is even happening, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys are familiar with local politics, you know, I mean, it's not the most riveting thing that, you know, people are just going out and getting involved in all the time. We'd sure love to have everybody involved more often, you know, but, you know, we have to look at what we think is gonna be better for the city, and that includes the potential and future residents. I hope you see that we're doing the work to do that we're not taking this decision lightly. And, you know, like I said, Justin, I mean, we're all definitely trying to work in good faith, but I think we want to have answers to some of these questions. You know, Rogers, there are logistical problems that for whatever reason they don't want Scissortail to be a part of the city anymore. And, you know, frankly, I think the way the history has been explained, but they were trying to expand out to a certain point, they're not able to do that anymore, and so now they kind of are hanging out in a way they may not want to be anymore. You know, I'm sure that Rogers will pass their ordinance, you know, and so what I'm more trying to figure out is what do we need to do? How do we support the city, the residents that are coming in, everything like that? And I do think these are big questions that don't have just quick, easy, you know, answers to. And we do want to see more data than maybe Rogers did before they made their decision, because again, from them, they're eliminating an expense and bringing in easily developed land over there on the east side.
Well, the only decision that's been made is just to move forward and explore it. Nobody's made a decision to actually do it yet.
Well, I have
It's
some,
the same night thing that we're talking about.
I have some marching orders, from you guys, so I appreciate that.
Yep, yep.
And so I think, we'll work towards that, and then, you know, I'll share information with you guys, and we can
That's fair.
reconvene on those topics, so.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank-
Can I make one more
Thank you
point?
all.
We're not supposed to be making comments. That's something that was in the rules.
You know, I apologize too, but
We can-
we
you
let
can
you
talk
talk,
to
and we
all
didn't
of
let
us
these people
afterwards.
talk, so we'll just, you know, in a week, we got a public meeting, and
Yeah.
everybody can talk.
And you're welcome to talk to all of us right after the meeting too. But, any further here?
Let's,
We ready?
let's let the attorneys stop their billable hours for tonight.
Would you, do you think you'll have some of those answers by the work session?
Yeah, but
The
try
open
to-
session?
Certainly to continue
Try.
the momentum, yeah, and try to
Okay.
get as much as I possibly can, yeah, but I think we get,
All right,
we
thank
get a
you.
lot more information for.
I appreciate it.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Got a motion by Eric, do I hear a second? Second by JJ. Thank you all.